Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Marquette University Law School, the virtual Lubar Center. I'm Mike O'Shea, and this is On the Issues. And today we're talking with Wisconsin Congressman Ron Kind, who has represented the 3rd Congressional District in Western Wisconsin since 1997. He has been a member of the House Ways and Means Committee, much of his work focusing on issues related to small businesses with a specific focus on the healthcare challenges those businesses face. He's also been focused, as you might expect, on the issue of agriculture reform. Congressman Kind is known for his bipartisan approach to his job. I think he said that's made him something of a dying breed in Washington, something we may talk about today. By my calculations, he is the 10th longest serving congressman in Wisconsin history. But in August of this year, he announced he would retire at the end of his term in about a year from now. So today we'll be talking about his decision, his career, the state of our politics and our democracy, and maybe about what's next. Congressman Ron Kind, good to have you with us. Always a pleasure visiting with you.
Well, Mike, great pleasure to be with you. And I enjoyed our conversations when you were doing Upfront all those years. You did a terrific job with that, and congratulate you with the work you've been doing with the Lubar Center. And I look forward to the conversation today and what's in your future as well.
Well, let's talk about your future first. And when you announced that you were going to step away from Congress at the end of your term, this is back in August, you said you'd run out of gas, which struck a guy like me, who's maybe a few years older than you, as saying, how could he be running out of gas at the, only in his upper 50s or so? Explain what was behind that decision.
Mike, it's been 26 years, and that's a long time traveling back and forth to Washington. Tanya and I decided to stay and raise our family in Western Wisconsin. So it's been a commuting job. And then I have a large rural Western Wisconsin district, 19 counties, about 5 hours from north to south. So it's a lot of hours on the road, a lot of counties, a lot of people to take care of. And after 26 years, it just kind of wears you down a little bit. So Tanya and I are looking forward to our next chapter. We plan on staying in Wisconsin, being involved, figuring out new ways of helping the community, helping the state. But it's been the honor of my life, being able to represent my home area and the state of Wisconsin in Congress through these years. Never intended it to be an honor for an entire life. And so I just feel this is the right time for me to be stepping down and let someone else take over for a while.
Do you anticipate practicing law? Do you I mean, that's your background. What do you think is in the future for you?
No, I'm not sure yet. I still have over a year to figure that out because my term expires in January of 2023. So we still have another year of breaking the tape here in Congress, and there's a lot of work to do. But listen, I've always had this itch to teach. I've always respected my teachers growing up and the influence that they had. I think I've learned a few things along the way when it comes to public service and our democracy, the do's and don'ts. So, I might have to scratch that, but stay tuned. We'll let you know.
I'm wondering how much our politics had to do with your decision. And by that, I mean, I think you've a couple of times referred to yourself as a dying breed in Washington, a relic. When you're referring to your bipartisan approach to the job, did the state of our politics enter into your decision?
I'd lie if I say it wasn't a factor at all, but I don't want to overemphasize it because I do want to leave with a hopeful and optimistic message about the strength of our democracy. We do need good leaders, good young people, especially to be stepping up and willing to serve in public service. I still think it's a noble calling. We have a democracy that's worth fighting for, but unquestionably, the politics have gotten very toxic in recent years. And it's a lot harder for an individual like me who was respectful of the office, respectful of my colleagues, including my colleagues across the aisle. Took a lot of time to try to get in the same room with them, to listen to them. I found by doing that through the years, you can find a lot of common ground that you can work on together. I think because of that approach, I've been not only, as you mentioned at the top, one of the most bipartisan members, but also one of the most effective members, because that's how our democracy is supposed to work. A little give and take. You're never going to get everything that you want. It's not a dictatorship after all. But you have to be willing to compromise, and we're losing that a lot these days in the political system. Now it's more about destroying the other side, demonizing them, making people fearful of the other party. And things have just gotten way too polarized and way too hyper-partisan. And you can imagine someone from my pedigree, it's not a very comfortable environment to serve in. So maybe someone else has a better answer of how we can straighten out our political system. But after 26 years, I think it's time for a little turnover.
Well, give me your assessment. Why are we more polarized? Why is this toxicity increasing in American politics?
Well, that is really the key question. And I think we're in a very perilous time for our democracy. We have a lot less respect for our democratic institutions. Obviously, the previous administration took us to a very dark place with a lot of his authoritarian tendencies, disrespect for freedom of the press, for instance, the independence of the judiciary, the co-equal branches of government, and how we're supposed to act as a check and balance against each other, and respect for individual citizens throughout our country. Because, listen, we are a very big and diverse nation. I've always been one that views that diversity as a source of one of our greatest strengths as a country. But you have one major political party who's trying to scare people and thinking that that's something to be feared rather than to be embraced. And it's so easy to divide people along racial lines. And we've seen that consistently in recent years, with incidents back home to the politics. And that's been unfortunate. But I think we've lost our listening skills as a people in this country. And that's where you start to get to know people, to build up trust, to find those areas of common ground that you can work on together. And I think it's become more politically advantageous just to demonize the other side and try to destroy them rather than try to find ways to work with them. Yeah, campaigns should be about heated debates. The debates we have in Congress, they should be very impassioned and heartfelt and strong. But at the end of the day, we got to remind ourselves we're Americans first, not Democrats, not Republicans or independents. We have a country that's in desperate need of some help. But the political system just can't deliver, it seems, much these days.
So contrast for me the Congress you entered back in 1997 to the one you serve in today. How is it different?
I don't want to create this illusion that it wasn't tough even back then. I mean, I entered when Newt Gingrich was Speaker, Tom DeLay, Dick Armey was running the House. It was a very polarized and partisan atmosphere even then. And yet there were still some ways that we could work together. At the committee level, I've been honored to serve on one of the most prestigious committees in Congress, the Ways and Means Committee. Gwen Moore, my colleague from Wisconsin, also serves on the committee now, so she'll be able to do a good job of upholding Wisconsin's interests. But I think social media hasn't helped. I think it's created these easy echo chambers for us to gravitate to, where we seek confirmation of our pre-existing biases and prejudices rather than challenging our assumptions. And I think more and more people are just gravitating to a single source for all their information needs. And therefore, they have an incomplete picture of what's happening out there. But my greatest concern, Mike, I think, is this. We've lost a factual basis, a common set of truth in this country. An alternate reality has been created where facts don't matter. You can make things up, the wildest conspiracy. The biggest one today, I fear, is the big lie from the last campaign, that it was fraudulent, that it wasn't to be trusted, that there was cheating involved. And when you start debasing our election system like that, you're convincing people to lose confidence in the most basic fundamental that should be uniting us as Americans. That's the sanctity of the ballot box. And we've had the outgoing president and by and large his party attacking the election system in our country so that half the nation doesn't believe in the outcome, or the only outcome they'll accept is the one where their candidate wins. And that's a very dangerous place for us to be in a democracy, because it gave rise to January 6th, an attempted violent overthrow of our nation's government. I mean, that was the greatest attack on our nation's capital since the War of 1812, when the British came here and ransacked our capital, burnt the Capitol and the White House. And the greatest challenge that we've had in our democracy since the Civil War, when the South succeeded and we had the great conflict during the 1860s. But even then, a Confederate flag never flown in the halls of the Capitol. Unfortunately, that was the case on January 6th. And it just shows you how bad our politics have become, that there could be an attempted insurrection like that, led by the outgoing president of the United States, and now defended by his party. And that's something that hasn't been cleansed yet from our electoral system. And I think it's very dangerous right now.
Yeah, you say very dangerous. Would you describe the state of our democracy as fragile right now?
Very fragile. I mean, we were a majority away on January of having an overthrow of the election results. Is there anyone out there who doesn't believe for a second that if Republicans were in the majority of Congress last January, that they would not have certified the election results? That would have been a constitutional crisis that we've never faced before. And the attempted coup, an armed insurrection to overturn that election result may have led to armed conflict in the streets. But fortunately, there were enough members of Congress that upheld the certification that the states had already made in regards to the election. And we returned later that day on January 6th and completed the job that was required of us by the Constitution. But if the other party had been in control then, I don't think the outcome would have been the same. And we would have been in very dangerous, uncharted waters then.
So it's quite possible the other party could be in charge of Congress, could be in charge of the Senate in 2022. You could potentially have a Republican president in 2024. So the next two elections going forward, how concerned are you about the push for changes to election law in many states around the country?
Very concerned, because they're trying to displace people who are nonpartisan in their approach, objective, just trying to run a clean election system with their own handpicked people, the people who have vowed to make sure that the election outcome only goes one way. And that's going to create conflict too. And it's very dangerous. I think at some point, some way, and I've got a lot of respect for many Republican members, many of whom are close friends of mine, but they've got to come together and figure out a way to purge Trumpism from their party. Because this is a guy, he's a narcissistic bully where the world revolves around him. He has only one interest, and that's himself. And he's demanding obedience and allegiance to himself these days. Otherwise, he'll seek to destroy you. His loyalty runs only one way, to him. He doesn't show it to anyone else. And it's a very dangerous kind of cult of personality that the Republican Party is subjected to right now. So we need good members of that party to take back their conservative principles and what the party stood for in the past and get away from the worship of personality that's going on right now, because unquestionably he has very strong authoritarian tendencies. We saw that during the 4 years when he was in the White House. And I'm afraid if he's reelected, all bets are off. I think he's going to be a very vengeful president at that point.
You say that you have good friends who are Republicans, friendships you built over the years. What do they say to you privately about where they think their party is, what the former president is saying and doing these days?
Well, they're telling me the same thing I just told you privately. I'm willing to say it publicly, out in the open, just how dangerous this is. But they feel they can't because the base of their party is with former President Trump, and they're afraid that they come out. I mean, look how they've treated Liz Cheney. Look how they're treating Adam Kinzinger. Look how they treated the 13 Republican House members 2 weeks ago that supported a very good bipartisan infrastructure bill. They are attacking them now because President Trump asked them to do that. So it's very dangerous, I think, politically for them to push back in that fashion, but somehow they need to figure it out, because that Republican Party cannot just be a cult of personality around Donald Trump. He could take us to a very dangerous and dark place as a country, but that's the internal struggle that they're up against right now. And unfortunately, we're losing a lot of good members on the Republican side who are deciding to do something else too, because they don't want to have to contend with that.
Did the prospect of Republicans gaining control of the House in 2022 enter into your decision making at all? Was it a factor that you even considered as saying, boy, if I leave my seat, that makes it perhaps more likely that Republicans will get control of the House? Did that play any role in your decision?
No, I really didn't, because every election is that way, Mike. When you're one of the few who actually represents a competitive district like I have, and I hope after redistricting that the third CD still remains competitive. We need more competitive districts in Wisconsin and throughout the country in order to have our elected representatives play honestly, so that they're not just kowtowing to the far right or the far left all the time. We have a major problem with gerrymandered districts right now, and that's increasing the polarization with the elected representatives. Listen, I tell people Congress is a reflection of where the American people are. And if you draw a district that's 70% Republican or 70% Democrat, that tells that individual that there's no incentive politically for them to reach across, find common ground, and try to work in a bipartisan fashion. And I think that is only getting worse. We're seeing through this redistricting process this time. And so that's one of many ills that is creating a sick democracy. I think the role of big money is another big problem that we have in our democracy. The unaccounted for super PAC, the dark money that comes in and carpet bombs people during the course of campaigns. And no one has a clue where that money is coming from. And I think that too is very dangerous for our country.
So in your last election, you won by about 2.5 points, but President Trump won your district. And we've seen the district in the last couple of presidential election cycles move further towards Republicans. It's become a redder district. And I'm wondering, as a Democrat, why do you think that is? Why are Democrats not connecting with the people who live in the small towns or the rural areas of your district? What is missing there?
Well, first of all, I did win by 3%, not 2.5, which was a solid showing since I performed way above the top of the ticket. Sure. Listen, just 2 years earlier, I carried the district 60-40. And so it does tend to swing from time to time. And to Donald Trump's credit, he had the ability to bring a lot of people out who normally didn't participate come election season, normally didn't vote. And we saw that huge drop off in 2018 during his midterm. So I guess the real question next year is who shows up and how that's going to affect the outcome of these races across the board, not just in a competitive district like I represent. But I think it is a problem in our democracy when you have these gerrymandered, these rigged districts where the politicians are choosing their voters. It's supposed to be the other way around. The role of big money, the super PACs that Citizens United opened the floodgates to, that needs to be corrected. It was a horrible Supreme Court decision equating unlimited dark money to free speech. And I think we need good citizens who are going to be the ultimate judge and referee and where we go as a country to show up. And those big decisions start on election day and who we're choosing to represent us.
Do you think Democrats are their stance on issues is resonating with the voters of your district, or is this a cultural divide? What's happening?
I think it's more cultural than policy. I think you look at the policy, there's been wide embrace of the issues that we Democrats have been trying to get accomplished, from the American Rescue Plan, which was an expansion of the child tax credit. Mike, that thing alone lifted over half of the children living in poverty out of poverty this last year. And we're trying to continue that through the Build Back Better Act that we're working on right now. The Rescue Plan and the Build Back Better Act has substantial resources for broadband expansion, especially in rural areas like mine. Widely popular. That's a nonpartisan issue. The infrastructure bill, nonpartisan issue. We need good roads, highways, bridges, ports, airports, and the broadband to deal with the digital divide. Widely popular. The process is pretty ugly, though, and you can't blame people for looking a little askance at the Democratic Party when we're at each other's throats, it seems, in the course of these negotiations with the Build Back Better plan. But my question is, where's the Republican Party in all this? Why are they taking a walk on an infrastructure investment that can sustain long-term economic growth? Why are they opposed to an expansion of the child tax credit that's lifting all these children out of poverty? Why are they voting no on the resources to close the digital divide, especially in rural areas such as mine? They shouldn't be given a pass just because we Democrats haven't settled on a consensus yet, but that's part of the legislative process. It's not always pretty. It takes a lot of time. You've got to have the patience of Job to get anything done because our system's set up to be difficult to do things. And furthermore, Mike, 75 senators right now represent 40% of America's population. And so the Senate is set up to be obstruction, to not get anything done. When you have a minority of people represented in the Senate with an overwhelming majority of the votes, you're not going to get consensus very easily over there. And it's very easy then to block things and make sure things don't happen. And that's really been the story this past year with the Democratic majority in Congress. The House has been passing things left and right. We passed an extension of the budget so that the government doesn't shut down at the end of the week. We passed legislation to deal with the debt ceiling so we don't default on our nation's financial obligations for the first time in our nation's history. It's been Republicans who have been saying no, and especially the Republicans in the Senate who are willing to filibuster this now, requiring 60 votes to get anything done. And that's never been done before when it comes to the debt ceiling. No minority party has ever filibustered the need to deal with that so we don't default. Because if we do, again, we're in very perilous, uncharted economic waters, and a lot of bad things will happen because of that.
I was going to ask you, are you optimistic about that happening, that by the middle of the month, you will be able to raise the debt limit, or are you somewhat skeptical that that's going to happen?
Well, it's never been done. And the reason why we've never defaulted is because I think most reasonable people realize the severe consequences of defaulting on our debt. We're losing the full faith and credit of the United States currency. Our dollar would plummet. The financial markets would collapse. There would be mass unemployment in very short order. And the rest of the world would lose faith in the United States as a place to invest their capital. And we've been the primary beneficiary for over 100 years of being the safe haven for foreign investment and to invest in our T-notes and our treasury bonds. And that's given us lower interest rates in order to reinvest in our own country. All that would be in jeopardy if we were to default. And so I get the politics. And listen, in my earlier years, I was guilty being in the minority, telling the majority that, hey, you're in the majority, it's your responsibility to raise the debt ceiling because it's easy to play political games with it. But we've never had the minority party in the Senate willing to filibuster the debt ceiling. They could stick it to us Democrats and make sure that we put up all the votes, which we're willing to do to avoid the catastrophe. But now they're standing in the way by filibustering and requiring 60 votes to get it passed, knowing full well that there isn't 60 votes to do it because no Republican will support it. And so that's what makes it different this time. And that's what scares me.
One final question about your party. So I guess my question is this: are you concerned, as someone who has represented the western part of the state, which has cities like Eau Claire and La Crosse, but also a lot of rural areas, a lot of small town areas? Are you worried that your party is essentially become a party that's perceived to be urban centric? In other words, cities, the suburbs surrounding those cities, and that the party just doesn't somehow relate to people who live outside of those areas. Are you concerned about that?
Yeah, I think that's fair criticism. I think we Democrats need to show up more. We need to start showing up in these areas that we're underperforming. And listen, I've made a career of doing that. That's one of the reasons why I've had the support of people back home, election after election, for 26 years, including the most recent tough elections that a lot of Democrats faced. Is you got to be willing to show up, show the respect, be willing to listen, understand the challenges that people are also facing in rural America, and be willing to work with them. And hopefully then you can get past some of those cultural identity issues too that tend to shape people's opinions. But I guess my bigger concern is where people are getting their information from. I mean, I like to still work out in the morning. Mike, I think you do too. You look like you're in pretty good shape. But when I'm on the treadmill in the morning, I have CNN up on one station, Fox News on the other. It's like two different worlds on what's being reported upon. And there's no common consensus of what even the basic facts or what the truth is out there. And if you don't have that common element to start from, how are you going to find solutions to work on together? And I'm really concerned about that. One of the things I've always enjoyed doing as a representative is holding listening sessions in all 19 counties every year just to get feedback from people. And it's become more difficult to do that because people now are showing up with these wild conspiracy theories that are just absent of any facts or any truth behind it. And you just can't have a conversation on that basis. And it's very disappointing that there's so many people holding these strongly held beliefs that are not rooted in any substance. And that does concern me as a democracy then.
I was going to say, how does a democracy work if we can't agree on facts?
The Washington Post has this theme that democracy dies in darkness. And I think what they're getting at is if we're not a well-educated electorate, we're a well-educated citizenry. And you go back to Jefferson and Franklin and Washington, and they all believe that was the key to the success of a democracy. you're not going to be able to sustain it for very long. Then people are willing to gravitate to that strongman image, to those authoritarian tendencies with no checks and balances and no institutional role for a free press or the independence of the judiciary to play. And that really became challenged the last 4 years under the Trump administration. We bent, but we didn't break. I'm not entirely confident that we won't break the next time there's another authoritarian wannabe occupying the White House. Because again, people are viewing partisan politics as a cutthroat proposition now, where the other side is not someone that you have to work with and try to find common ground, but someone to be destroyed. And we're seeing that more and more these days. And I'm seeing that happening in the Republican Party, where they're turning on each other. Those who would be considered more moderate and reasonable, you can work with, are being chastised and driven out of their party right now. So, and I have to admit, Mike, I'm disappointed with the Wisconsin delegation, the 2 new members. They all voted to overthrow that last election. The very first votes they took as new members, they refused to certify the election results. And I've been proud in the past of the Wisconsin delegation and our ability to come together and work on issues, especially of great importance to our state. And now we're even losing that capability as a state delegation.
So that's obviously a disappointment to you. Let me talk about something that's a little rosier. So when you start to put things in perspective, your career in perspective, what do you think you did best? What did you accomplish during your time in Congress? It's a lot of years. What was you most proud of?
Yeah, before I go to any specific legislation, I'll take a 30,000-foot view of it. And that's treating the office with the respect and dignity that it deserves, and treating the people that you represent with that respect and dignity. And I try to be honest. I've worked hard. I've tried to be responsive and accessible to the people back home. And really, that's what you should expect from your representative. Not that you're going to agree with them all the time. I think we're also elected to exercise sound, reasonable judgment. I mean, after all, we have to study these issues day in and day out. We talk to a lot of people on how that's going to impact them. And so there are going to be times when you're going to disagree with your representative, but you want them to work hard. You want them to be honest. You want them to be upfront, and you want to have access to them. And I think I've done that, throughout the years. And by listening to people in Wisconsin too, the folks that I represent, they expected me to try to find some common ground with Republican members. And not just my way or no way at all attitude. And that's another source of concern that I have, Mike, is too many of the newly elected reps are coming to Washington or even Madison with this my way or no way at all attitude with them. And that's not conducive to the survival of a democracy. That requires give and take and compromise, and that you're not going to get everything that you want. And it's not winner take all. And so I try to fight against those tendencies and try not to be so tribal in my outlook when it came to representing my district. But on the legislative front, I've worked incredibly hard, tried to deliver more accessible, affordable healthcare. Been one of the principal voices in changing the way we pay for healthcare. So it's quality and outcome-based and no longer fee-for-service or volume-based payments. And right now, over half of Medicare payments are quality-based payments. I think that's going to get us better outcomes at a much better price. And it's really the key to transforming the healthcare system that was failing too many people and leaving them behind. I'm proud that I was the author of the Veterans History Project, where we're still out collecting the stories of our veterans and what it was like for them to serve our nation in times of war and peace. I think it's an important part of American history that needed to be preserved. We have 120,000 veterans stories now collected, being archived at the Library of Congress, so future generations will never forget their service and sacrifice. I've worked hard to stand up for our family farmers back home who are up against a farm policy that benefits large agribusinesses and leaves them at a distinct disadvantage. We've seen record family farm bankruptcies in recent years, much to my heartbreak and chagrin, and we're losing that diversity in agriculture, which isn't going to be good for our state in the long run. And I've also, as a kid who grew up from a low-income family, Mike, I benefited from the need-based financial aid programs. I was first generation to go to college. There's no way my family could have afforded to send me, or I had the financial means to do it on my own. So yeah, I took out some student loans. I was a recipient of Pell Grants because of my low-income status. I did work study all 4 years in college. I think I hold the undergraduate career for the most toilets cleaned in a 4-year span. It was the most disgusting job on campus, but it paid the most through work study. So I was willing to do it while still playing football. And through a combination of those things, it worked for me. And I've always stood up now to defend those need-based financial aid programs. So I wouldn't be that representative pulling the ladder up behind me and telling the next generation, tough luck, you're on your own. I think we need to make that investment in the future of our country and make sure those doors of educational opportunity are left open to all our students, regardless of financial means, tech school, or if they choose a 4-year college or university. That's really going to be the key to our success as a nation going forward, because the jobs in the future are going to put a premium on those higher education skills, those lifelong learning skills, and we got to make it easy for students to accomplish that.
I wanted to ask you a what if question, because there have been different points in your career, and I think you and I have talked about them, at least some of them, in the past, where people have urged you to run for governor, 2010, 2012, in the recall election, people have urged you to run for Senate, but you decided not to. Help us better understand the trajectory of your career. Why did you not do what many people expect a politician to do, which is to go for that next prize, to go for that next big office?
The simple answer was my family. My 2 boys were born into Congress. Johnny was born just a few days before my first primary. Matt came a couple years later. I didn't want to be that absent father. Running statewide, that's 2 years out of my boys' lives, because it would be a nonstop on the road campaign, fundraising, campaigning the whole time. And if you're elected, you're representing an entire state, not just 19 counties, which is a huge obligation. And I wasn't going to do it halfway either. I felt that people were going to elect me to a statewide office, so I would have to commit myself statewide to do a good job. And I kind of weighed that against my parental responsibilities and ultimately decided to try to stick around so I could catch some of my boys' academic and athletic events a little bit and not be that full-time absent father. That's probably the simplest explanation. But yeah, was I interested in being the chief executive of a great state like Wisconsin? Absolutely. I think it'd be a wonderful job to have, and the things you can accomplish in that position. And I give a lot of credit, to those who are willing to serve on a statewide basis, because boy, it's a huge sacrifice that they're making.
Had Tom Barrett not run in 2010 or 2012, would you have run?
Yeah, probably, because it was early enough in my career. But I was able to stick around here, get seniority on a very powerful committee in Congress, the Ways and Means Committee. Once that happens, it's tough to walk away from, because you can get a lot done in that position. But it takes a little bit of time to establish that seniority. And I guess my advice to future elected wannabes out there is, if you get elected to Congress, and if you're thinking about another office, do it quicker rather than working your way up the seniority ladder, when you're able to accumulate more power and get more things done.
Before we go, let me see if they have a question or two from the folks who are watching this right now. I'll go to our program manager at the Lubar Center, Hillary DeBlois. Hillary, any questions?
Hello, Mike and Congressman Kind. Building off of what you just said, Congressman Kind, you mentioned in the beginning our democracy is worth fighting for. What advice would you give to the next generation of public servants, particularly those interested in running for elected office?
My advice is do it. We need good people who are willing to step up now and serve these public service positions. It's not always easy. It's not the best paying job, but it's very fulfilling personally. And the ability to be in a position to help other people is incredibly fulfilling. And I certainly have benefited from that throughout the years. But there are multiple ways for them to get involved. By interning perhaps in an office themselves, getting involved in someone else's campaign, running at the local level. We need good people on school boards, councils, county boards, all those positions are opportunities. And then look at state and federal opportunities as well. I wouldn't discourage anyone, but you have to have pretty thick skin. I will caution people. My dad probably gave me the best political advice when I first came to him and told him I was thinking of running for Congress. And knowing that I loved playing quarterback in high school and in college, he said, well, you knew every day or every Saturday afternoon when you stepped on that field that half the people in the stands wanted to see you complete passes. The other half wanted to see you fail miserably. If you can put up with that, you can probably put up with politics as well. And he was right. You got to have a pretty thick skin.
Any others, Hillary, or are we good?
Thank you, Mike. I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, I'm going to end this with a look ahead, and you talked a little bit about what might be in your future, Congressman Kind. But a lot of people would be curious to get your perspective on your district and what's going to happen in 2022. How challenging will it be for a Democrat to win your district?
Well, listen, I think we have a very good candidate already. Brad Pfaff, who I've known virtually my whole life. He was a former staffer of mine. He was Governor Evers' acting agriculture secretary. He was President Obama's farm service administrator statewide for the state of Wisconsin. Someone who was born on a dairy farm. I mean, his DNA is firmly rooted in that rural Western Wisconsin district. There's no better person with decency and civility and hard work ethic that I think the district deserves right now. But elections are about choices, Mike. And he'll be up against the guy I defeated last year. There's Derek Van Orden. Now, I will remind people, Derek Van Orden was part of the armed insurrection on January 6th. He was on the wall of the Capitol, encouraging the violent overthrow of our government. He wrote a book about how to be a real man, where he thought it was funny and bragged about sexually harassing two female subordinates when he was in the military. He just recently berated a 17-year-old high school student at the Prairie du Chien Public Library because it was Pride Month and there was a book display on diversity that she was there, and he didn't like that. So he got in her face and berated her and screamed at her and drove her out in tears. That's not the type of person we need in Congress these days. We have too many of them already. And so this election is going to be a choice between these candidates. And I have confidence that the people in my congressional district are going to make the right choice come next year.
Out of fairness, I should mention there are several Democratic candidates running for the seat. And I should say that Mr. Van Orden says that he was at the protest at the Capitol, but did not go through the barricades, I think is the latest.
Mike, he's been caught in a lie. I mean, he was clearly past the barricade. He was on the wall. He had a listening device in there. It seems he was clear that he was coordinating movements of other people that day too. And so he can try to backtrack on that all he wants, but the facts belie what he's saying right now. And he needs to be called out on that. And I am calling him out on it because it was one of the most disgraceful episodes in our nation's history. And he was front and center and a part of that mob that came to do severe damage to our democracy, let alone the physical injuries that occurred that day.
Congressman Kind, appreciate the opportunity to speak with you again. Wish you well in your final year plus in office. I know you've got meetings to go to as you kind of figure out ways to keep the government running. But again, thanks very much for your time.
Mike, it's always a pleasure, and I wish you nothing but the best in your future. I understand you're going to be winding up soon yourself, so enjoy life and the family, and hopefully our paths will cross soon again.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I always appreciate your availability. Congressman Ron Kind, the congressman from Western Wisconsin. Good to see you, and thanks to everybody watching today. A reminder, if you'd like to see this again, it was an interesting conversation. It will be posted online too, so you can watch it at your convenience. Congressman Kind, thanks very much.
Thank you.